Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and I'm a huge fan of playing Emotes in the patch 9.2.5, finishing up my character tier sets, exploring different playstyles with the recent updates, and even leveling brand new characters to take advantage of the cross-faction feature. And I've been getting a lot of messages from you guys asking me what's a great class to start playing in the patch 9.2.5 as either a returning player, a brand new player to the game, or someone looking to level new alts for the cross-faction update. A lot of you are looking for playstyles that are easy to get into, but something has a ton of potential for the end game content. And like I tell everybody, in most circumstances, you should just play the class that you enjoy the most. Just about every single playstyle can do well with enough time and gear invested in the patch 9.2.5. But in this video, I will go over the recommended classes that have seen a lot of success and have taken a dominant position as some of the stronger playstyles for raiding, Mythic Plus, and PvP content in the Season 3 of the patch 9.2. But right before we get into this video list, most of you guys watching these videos are still not subscribed. However, the more of you are reminded, the more of you do. So let's keep it going. Subscribe to the channel as well as to the bell if you're watching these videos anyway. Especially if you want to catch more regular video updates like these, patch 9.2.5 news and class changes, and potentially future alpha announcements of the next expansion of Dragonflight. The first class on the list will be the class of Death Knight, starting with its tank spec, which is currently one of the more dominant tanks for all endgame content. The Blood DK has been greatly enhanced with a 9.2 tier set, allowing them an extended duration of the runic weapon, which turns them into an unkillable juggernaut, capable of receiving and delivering overwhelming damage. You summon an extra runic weapon by your side to mimic your attacks, which rewards you with far greater DPS output. Frost Death Knight tier set greatly enhances their output in AoE content, which gives them a dominant position in some of the AoE focused Sepulchre raid fights, but also a much greater presence within Mythic Plus content. And while Unholy DK is slightly behind Frost for PvE, it does dominate within PvP. Their tier set greatly amplifies the damage of undead minions. The recent Death Knight buffs to better counter magic damage has further improved on their PvP performance. The class of Monk is another recommended option, starting with the tank spec of Brewmaster. Brewmasters are an excellent tank for a starting new player, mostly thanks to the stagger mechanic. Stagger offsets a portion of the damage you take for later, which makes it much easier to heal for both you and your healer. Stagger happens passively, so it's really easy to pick up. And with the patch 9.2 tier set, survivability and damage has only improved for Brewmaster. Windwalker is a fantastic spec that dominates in AoE Mythic Plus content, and with the recent buffs to their single target damage, the overall PvE performance has just been upgraded. They also are a very powerful choice when it comes to PvP. And lastly, Mistweaver is probably one of the most fun healers I have ever played. Currently in 9.2.5, it dominates when it comes to raid performance. This raid healing output also translates really well into rated battlegrounds, granting them an advantage when it comes to RBG PvP content. The next class recommended on this list will be the Druid, starting with Resto, which saw damage and healing buffs in the patch 9.2. As of 9.2.5, Restoration is a fantastic healer that excels at all endgame content, with a tier set that strongly empowers its healing output. It's also one of the few healers that has the ability to play into hybrid builds, letting them either fully focus on keeping their allies safe, or dive into damage playstyles, enhancing their sustain in Mythic Pluses, burst in PvP, and damage potential within raiding content. Guardian Druid is another excellent playstyle that did see some early nerfs in the patch 9.2, but even after the damage changes, it is still a very highly effective tank. The easy playstyle makes it much more new player friendly, and even with the tier set nerfs, it still has very solid damage performance. The spec of Feral Druid is a PvP powerhouse with dot-heavy gameplay. The tier set amplifies Berserk to rip your enemies to shreds, letting you mercilessly rot down unsuspecting enemy targets in arenas and battlegrounds. It also has some decent PvE performance. While not the most popular spec, Feral Druids do sport fantastic single target damage output. Currently, Balanced Druids are very similar to Feral, with a fantastic performance in rated battlegrounds, but with a slightly lacking PvE representation, at least when compared to previous seasons. Overall, the class of Druid brings a lot of spec variety, with all of its playstyles excelling at different endgame content. The next class on this list is gonna be the Priest. At the beginning of the patch 9.2, Holy received incredible buffs to its damage and healing output. Together with its powerful tier set bonuses, it became a top performer everywhere. Not only is Holy Priest competitive, but it's also an excellent spec for new players, and is a fantastic choice for anybody looking to explore the healing role for the very first time. With the recent buffs in 9.2.5, Disc Priest has recently been gaining some popularity within PvP. It's very difficult for Disc to compete against Holy in dungeons and raids, but recent buffs to the penance-based playstyle for arenas and battlegrounds gives Disc Priest a super fun playstyle with new possibilities and potential. The spec of Shadow is a solid ranged DPS choice that currently does decent in most content, excelling specifically in single target raid fights. In other endgame content, the playstyle does decent, but it hasn't been able to capture the wide popularity of the player community. Currently, the whole class of Rogue is a top PvP contender, with all three specs performing excellently in arenas and battlegrounds. Right now, Outlaw Rogue dominates the arenas with its cooldown reduction mechanic, an unpredictable spec with enhanced defensives and crowd control. The recent buffs to their single target damage gives them a new competitive edge when it comes to PvE content, specifically inside of Mythic Plus dungeons. The spec of Assassination is extremely deadly in PvP, especially if you play it with the Knight Fate Covenant, but it's also a very powerful contender for single target raid damage. Subtlety is a very solid all-around spec, with excellent performance in all endgame content, be it raids, Mythic Plus dungeons, or PvP. The class of Warrior is also on this list, with a spec of Fury leading the charge. Currently, Fury is one of the top performing melee classes in all endgame content. This playstyle has competitive numbers in both PvE and PvP. It has very high effective damage in AoE situations, which is highly sought after in both raids and Mythic Pluses. And it can easily overpower any other class within PvP, when combined with Necrolord Covenant, the tier set bonus, and the Reckless Abandon talent, making the spec of Fury a melee DPS powerhouse. Then we have the playstyle of Arms Warrior, which is a solid rating spec, but otherwise lives somewhat in the shadow of Fury. It is not a terrible playstyle, but on average it does do slightly less damage than Fury Warrior, which causes it to have lower popularity in PvE, but it has a very decent representation within PvP. Protection Warrior is a fun tanking spec, with a ton of single target damage and a massive array of defensive cooldowns. By no means is Protection Warrior a terrible spec, and it's only slightly behind the other tank and playstyles at the high end game content. Even then, it is still a very solid defensive option for all end game content. The next class on this list will be the Warlock, starting with Destruction, which is an ultimate PvE powerhouse. Destruction Warlock tier set is incredibly strong in the patch 9.2. which allows them a very simplistic AoE focused playstyle that's extremely effective. And this tier set bonus makes them overall highly favorable in all endgame PvE content. This overwhelming damage can also be seen within PvP, though Destruction also saw a defensive nerf as well, which set him behind a little bit, but it still makes him a very effective choice for arenas and battlegrounds. In PvE content, Demonology is only slightly behind Destruction, gaining a little bit more of an advantage in pure single target raid fights. In PvP, however, Demonology saw tanking and offensive buffs that let it see a rise in popularity. Recently, Affliction has been getting better PvE representation, but it's still quite behind Destruction and Demonology. In PvP, Affliction saw similar defensive nerfs, yet they still retained a huge portion of their overall survivability. And Affliction is also an insanely powerful spec when it comes to rated battleground PvP content. The next class on this list will be the Mage, with a spec of Fire maintaining competitive PvE damage when it comes to raids and Mythic Plus dungeons. Fire also has a fantastic lead when it comes to PvP, with its highly destructive combustion burst damage, great control in arenas, as well as fantastic survivability, making it rather difficult to lock down a Fire Mage in this bursty PvP meta. Frost Mage is an effective PvE spec with a lot of focus on AoE damage, which makes him decent in raids and highly effective in Mythic Plus endgame content. In the patch 9.2, we also saw a rise of the Frost Mage dominance when it comes to PvP, though the recently added resolve trinkets did receive a brand new nerf, making them less effective against interrupts, meaning a large portion of the Frost Mage damage and control can now be easily interrupted. Their damage in arenas is still highly effective, though they'll need to watch their interrupts a little bit more closely going forward. The spec of Arcane recently saw buffs for PvE and PvP, and while this playstyle does not have the same popularity that Fire and Frost has, it has seen some improved performance within all parts of endgame content. And finally, we have the class of Hunter, starting with a spec of Survival, which is absolutely the most explosive AoE DPS output. Their tier set added in the patch 9.2 makes them a very solid contender in all PvE content, and provides a decent chunk of burst within PvP as well. Marksmanship is the ranged alternative to the melee playstyle of Survival Hunter. Marksmanship is also very well suited for AoE output, though it is more cooldown reliant than Survival. However, it is a fantastic PvE performer if you don't enjoy the melee playstyle. Beast Mastery is a decent PvE choice, though it is going to be on average behind the other two specs in raids and dungeons. But where Beast Mastery is highly effective in is in PvP, offering a ton of sustained pressure from a distance, together with your pets, Cobra shots, and kill shot bleeds. Overall, the class of Hunter is a nice mix of melee and range that performs well in all parts of endgame content. Now it's going to be the full list of classes that I recommend for new players, returning players, and those looking for an alt in the patch 9.2.5. But please don't feel limited by this list. This is just my personal recommendations, and I highly encourage for all of you to explore and check out all of the other classes that were not mentioned in today's video. If you guys have a list of your own recommended classes, either based on highest performance, the popularity, or the fun factor, feel free to share it in the comments below. What class would you personally recommend to other players for the patch 9.2.5? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video or found it informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. And as always, in the description of every single live stream and video, we have a link to our Discord community channel. You guys are more than welcome to join our Discord, probably the best place to reach out to me directly in case you want to let me know your thoughts about this video. DMs are always open. Join our Discord to become part of the community. Thank you all so much for watching. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.